Hello, and welcome to the Greater Sums Fundraising Chat. My name is Anna Taylor, and I'm the director of the Greater Sum. We're a nonprofit foundation that provides grants, subject matter expertise, and professional development opportunities to innovative early-stage nonprofits. Part of the work we do to support nonprofit innovation is to support really productive conversations in the nonprofit sector, and that's why we're here today. Our webinars, we hope, are a way to provide that connection between people who love what they do in the sector and to open up new connections with audience members working in nonprofits. Thanks for joining. Our first panelist today is Jen Parker. Jen started her nonprofit career with the United Way, and she has since shifted into university fundraising. Jen now serves as Director of Development for Clark Honors College and University Scholarships at the University of Oregon.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm excited to share a little bit of knowledge and, of course, answer questions and be a resource as we move on after the webinar. So I'm going to set my timer because I have a tendency to talk. So let me just dive right in into the slideshow. All right. How's that look, everyone? Good, Anna? Okay. So I am sharing really how to create a fundraising plan. And what I'm just going to go over some basic tenets, but I want to say first that I was really inspired to read the interview between Anna and Todd Silverstein, the founder of the Greater Sun Foundation. And I wanted to let you all know that that's really inspired my presentation today. So with that interview in mind, I really liked what the founder Todd shared about what it takes to be a successful nonprofit leader. And so in my first slide, I'm just saying really what you want to do before you get right into the fundraising plan, you want to know that your plan is all about how to invite donors into your world, right? So nonprofits are centers for excitement and what the world could be like. And so make sure that you are keeping that in mind when you're creating your fundraising plan. Be absolutely inspired by the work that you're doing and know that you just have to take a little bit by little bit in order to plan out what you're going to do in a 12-month or 9-month cycle, depending on your nonprofit, what your needs are. But what's most important is that you know as a nonprofit professional or a volunteer working with a nonprofit professional that you are a dynamic, passionate, and self-sufficient leader, and you are guiding philanthropists to make incredible choices and make impacts in the world. So really be encouraged by that and let that inspire your plan. What Todd Silverstein noted was, to be really in that interview was about being collaborative, self-sufficient, and transparent. And that's what we're going to review today when designing the plan. So keep in mind, in all that you do, be transparent and stick to your goals. Goals change constantly. Not knowing what your nonprofit may need in a year is okay. You have to give yourself some forgiveness. Just plan to what you know now. Also, make sure that when you're looking at nonprofit fundraising plans, and I actually have an article to share with everybody, we'll send that out by email or link it through the Greater Sum Foundation folks. But make sure that you understand that it's all scalable, right? Only do what you can. If you're one person, then you have to allocate your time in order to meet a few priorities. Don't overwhelm your plan. But the key things is that you are sticking to your goals no matter what, because at the end of the day, you have to report. You have to be transparent and report where you were successful and what you can accomplish this year and next year moving forward. So following that annual plan is key. If you do nothing else, if you are just that single person, you need to just write a case for support. If you write it's a 2-page document on what your organization is doing and how you're going to impact the world, and with the resources that you will gain from fundraising, that is your case for support, and it will be your go-to item for everything. So again, if you do nothing else, write your case for support and email it to everybody. As I said, include a link to your giving page, and that's your bare bone fundraising plan for immediate action. If you have time to do more, what I recommend is to work on a year-round fundraising plan and think of it like a calendar. I like to do the strategic planning in the summertime. I like to make sure that I am planning for what I do is the academic year fundraising. So whenever your downtime may be, make sure to use that time period to plan out what the year is. The best thing is to get with anybody, if that's a volunteer or if you have an in-house financial person, understand what your budget needs are for immediate and long-term needs. Long-term, again, that's where we get dreamy. That's where we think bigger, right? Are we doing a capital campaign? Do we need a new building or a new space that we're raising money for? Do we need scholarships for our program participants? What is it that we need long-term, and what is the budget that we need to cover with fundraising dollars as soon as possible? We don't ever want to do immediate or emergency funding is not sustainable. However, every nonprofit needs to get those dollars in the door. So make sure you're hitting both in your fundraising plan. So really the key thing with a fundraising plan is to build your donor prospect list. So I talk about in this slide of building a fundraising pyramid. You just need to know how many individuals you are going to ask for support in a given year. And then you need to rate those, whether or not you have data to say how much you should ask them for. You have a general sense of your community or individuals when you talk to them. Make sure you're building a pyramid. If you're going to invite somebody to give $100 and you're going to invite like 10 people to do that, great. You need to calendar that out to make sure that you build time for those individual asks. If you're asking for $10,000 from 5 individuals, again, you need to build that into your timeline, and using a fundraising pyramid, which I'll show you in a minute, is really helpful in helping you think about how many individual asks you need to make. You need to know if you're doing of your donors, if those are new asks you're making, if you're asking people to come back as a renewed donor, or if donors have lapsed, if they haven't given 1 year and you want to invite them back. And then, of course, the types of asks that you're doing, corporations, foundations, individuals. So just build in time when you're creating your plan. Remember, in the calendar events, make sure that you're building time to say thank you to your donors and for annual reporting, because that is absolutely critical. Also, make sure that you are setting up coffees with your community partners, because collaboration is key whenever you're building a fundraising plan. What other nonprofits can you work with to do the work that needs to be done? So here's the fundraising plan pyramid that I mentioned. This is a very general pyramid, but a very useful tool. So again, count how many people are you going to ask for gifts from $1 to $25,000, and how many are going to go in each section. This is, make it scalable to your organization. If you're fundraising $5 million a year, then make sure that your pyramid adds up to the $5 million you need. If you're raising $100,000 a year, again, make sure everything adds up. You always want to create more asks than anything, because that will, if you ask a lot of people, if you ask 50 people and only 25 give, that's fine. You ask 50 people. So, okay, the next one is being funny, but outline the plan. So what I like to do is ask the who, what, when, where, why, right? So when you're designing your plan, make sure you ask who are you going to ask. That's annual donors, foundations, corporations, volunteers, and staff. Think of everybody and list them out and timeline when you are going to ask these entities for support. The next is when. So again, calendar your immediate and your long-term. I used examples here, fall coming up. How many asks am I going to make through the summer, into fall, and then moving forward for the rest of the year, and then really thinking ahead in a few years. What are those asks going to be? Why? So we need to make sure when we build our fundraising plan that we're answering the question, why would somebody support me, right? So that's where your case for support comes into play. And what your case for support is that invitation. and that call to action. So make absolutely sure that when you're building your plan that you're answering those questions so that you can inspire others to come on board with your mission. And then what? So this kind of plays into the why, of course, but make sure that your vision statement is lockstep. Make sure everybody in your organization, all volunteers, all leaders, know what your vision statement is. And then what are those key programs and projects that your organization is executing in order to make lasting change in the community? So just make sure that everybody knows what you're fundraising for. They don't have to go out and do the asks if you're the main fundraiser, but it would be great if everybody at the organization knows really what the programs are and what you need support for. And then funding needs, right? So what is it that you need? You need $100,000 to build the center, $10,000 for staff support. What is it? When you're doing your fundraising plan, make sure to list out the questions, almost like self-interviewing, right? So here's a typical, list of questions that I would ask myself. So the question then leads to what I'm scheduling in my plan or what I'm creating space for in my fundraising plan. So do I have a stewardship or an appreciation event? Have I written in time to create a case for support if needed? When am I sending out my annual report to current and lapsed donors to make sure that they know how we're using their money? And then am I creating an annual donor ask? And that can be any time of year. I work on an academic calendar, but other organizations might think that a spring or summer appeal is the best time, whatever works for you. The other thing is, do you have 100% board participation? If not, make sure that you're planning visits with every one of your key volunteers. And so these are, again, just examples of questions. The key thing is don't be scared of the plan. Know that it's going to work for you, and you really can do this. I mean, this is a tool that's going to help you organize your time and think forward. So I think one of my last slides is just, this is an example of what I had created a year or so ago, and it just outlines what my cultivation calendar was and what I was trying to lead to. So you can see I was planning a gala event, and I needed to make sure that I incorporated how many solicitations I was going to do for dollars, and then what my stewardship work would be. And so you can read through that and just see, this is an example of the cultivation calendar, which was one part of my fundraising plan. So that is the end of my slides. Let me get out of here. Okay. Okay, I think I did that right. Okay. And not bad. I still have a little time, but I did want to show that I shared, I don't know if you can see this well, but I'm going to share an article which I've just found really, really helpful, especially in that just getting started, initiating the fundraising plan. And the title is How to Plan Your Fundraising Strategy. And it's from an organization, Grassroots Fundraising Journal. So I just found it really helpful. And they actually have an example fundraising plan on the last page. So if you do nothing else, just skip to the last part and use that to build a template for yourself. My templates are all Excel spreadsheets, just desktop reminders for what I need to be focused on within the season or the year. And without that plan, I would be lost. I would be under my desk, kind of curled up going, what should I do? So really, I'm already thinking about what I'm going to be doing in October because of my fundraising plan. And that's what I know will make me successful in my fundraising work. So that's it from me. And I'm going to kick it back to Anna. Thank you so much.
Jen, thank you. Okay, this is how I know, you are a way more organized person than I am, and now I know that translates into your professional life as well. Let's all try and know what we're going to be doing in October, right? Jen, question that has come in for you. how do you know how much time, how much money, like how do you project for what resources you need to devote to different parts of your plan?
This is such a good question. It does, to answer it is to know exactly what kind of nonprofit I'm serving. If I am the lone fundraiser and I do not have any other assistants, I just have an executive director telling me this is what we need, then I have to allocate my time really well so that I don't get sucked into program issues within our small nonprofit, right? That I am executing, I am always out there, that I am the external person who has to go out and beat the drum for our organization. The executive director is doing that as well. But as a fundraiser, I need to make sure that 12 months out of the year is devoted to me being out of the office, asking volunteers for help, or what do they say? Treasure, time, and talent, right? So I'm out there asking for those things. The allocation of time is harder when you're when you're the lone person. It gets a lot easier if you have a volunteer board. And so understanding how to allocate your time is also working with your volunteer board and making sure that they are executing the fundraising plan with you. So being transparent, sharing your plan with them, and helping them really be engaged with the process of fundraising is key. If you have a bigger staff, then you're allocating time. So whether that's building, I mean, really just the few things is building an annual fund, right? So an annual appeal, that letter, please support us. Here's a link to our site. Please send a check-in. That's one thing. And then it gets into whether or not you're making planned gift asks or visiting with corporations and foundations for support and planning your travel. So it really does depend. But I would be happy to answer any questions for individuals based on the size of their organization.
Nice. Jen, that's a brave offer, and I bet that I will be taking you up on it as we start to get feedback. Thank you.
Please do.
Our next panelist is Paul Morris. Paul works with Elevate Oregon. He also has a 25-year fundraising career. So he's got experience across different parts of the spectrum, arts, youth development, and we're really excited that he's going to kind of share some of his experience and insight into the art of asking people to donate to your organization. Paul, thank you.
Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm going to share my screen. If you learn nothing else today, know this: philanthropy is not a spectator sport. If you are not, and what that means is if you are not asking, you are wasting your time. But it is a process, and having a plan, I'm so glad that Jennifer started, because you have to have a plan and you have to stick with it. You can have success. Just yesterday, Giving USA's new report came out, and over $410 billion was given away in 2017. 79% of that came from individuals. So there is a lot of money and support and passion that is available to all of us. It doesn't matter what your cause area is, it is all there for you. But you have to have a plan, and you have to stick with it, even though it might be scary. You have to do those things, and you have to ask. So the first thing I think that we want to look at is what motivates people, right? Knowing what and understanding your supporters is going to help you understand how to ask and how to get there and get that supporter to the place where you can have a very real conversation about the philanthropic investment that you need as an organization to deliver on your mission and vision, and the kind of philanthropic investment that they are able to make. Because not everyone is motivated in the same way. And so you need to be in touch regularly with your supporters. You need to communicate with them. You need to understand and know what they're going to be motivated by before you ask. And if you look at the top three, someone I know, trust, or respect asks, that's always, that in 25 years, that has always been the top motivator for why someone chooses to make an investment, because they are asked. We all have great causes, but if we don't ask people to join us and make an investment in our work, then it's not just going to magically appear. People are emotionally moved. It doesn't have to be over the top, but people, people are not widgets. They want to feel like they're part of something, that they're changing lives, that they're a part of a community. And you can see some of the other motivations, and look down at the last bullet point. The last motivator that I have found to be true, and I found this to be true, is a tax break. Unless you're doing something really exotic, a tax advantage is very rarely the primary driver of why someone chooses to give. It's because you ask, it's because they feel some part of something and that they feel like they're making a change. All right, so let's assume that you have a pool of some type. It doesn't matter how big the pool is. It could be 5 people. It could be 100 people. You have a pool of some amount, and you have to decide how you're going to allocate your time and effort. And so that means that you have to rate people. And it's not to be elitist or to exclude people. This is simply a way that you are going to be able to make a decision in where do I start? Who do I have the greatest probability of success with? Who do I need to work on longer term, so that you don't end up under your desk totally paralyzed because you're overwhelmed with the work that you have to do. Okay, so the major characteristics are they have some level of interest in your organization. Another characteristic of a great prospect is that they have a relationship with someone involved in your organization already. And the third one is that they have some kind of a capacity, that they have the ability to give. You can base these ratings on personal knowledge, right? Getting to know someone personally, any sort of financial data that is available, which in this case, I think means have they given to your organization previously? What can you find out about them, say, via Google, or if you are using a screening service? This is not rating is not about like pawing through the dark web or their trash to find out information. There's a great deal of information available very publicly. If someone is an officer in a corporation and they have stock options, if they cash those options in, there will be a report of that, and that would be available to see. So you're going to base these ratings on what you've been able to discover, on conversations that you have with trusted allies, and then just what you feel. That's really where the art of all of this comes in. It's a feeling that you get in making the ask. And then you just prioritize people on what's their capacity, what's their likelihood. Are they really into you and your cause? They're at the top of the list. Are they going to take a little bit longer time, but they have high capacity? They're going to go down the list a little bit. So then what I do, once I've done this, what I do is I put people into a grid. And I'm really trying to move people to the right, and both at the top and at the bottom. So they have high capacity and high interest. They're at the top of my list. I'm really working on how do I get in front of that person? How do I get them engaged? How do I get them excited about what we are doing so I can have that conversation? If they have lower capacity, but they still have high interest, I'm still trying to connect with them. I'm still trying to ask, but it's going to come in a different way. It may not be face-to-face. They may be the type of person who they're going to be a great ambassador, and I can ask them for a smaller gift, and I can ask them to host an event where they're going to give me access to their sphere of influence. What I would also say here is just because there are lower segments, that doesn't mean that I'm ignoring those people. I'm finding other strategies to connect with them, to make sure that they are being asked, that they are being engaged, but I'm not spending as much time consistently on those lower segments, whether they're low interest and high capacity or low capacity and low interest. So once I've done that, I have a pool, I've segmented them, I have my prospects, I'm ready, I have a great case, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to make an ask. You don't need a unicorn. You can do this. So I have found that there are 4 R's that if I can answer all of these, it's time. I have the right prospect, I have the right team, it's the right time, and I have determined the right amount. So we've talked about prospects already, and how do you find those right prospects? A team is really good. While I am perfectly comfortable asking solo, I like going with someone else, especially if the prospect knows that person, because that's a trusted confidant that gives us credibility, and they can talk, that person I'm with can talk with passion about why they're involved and why this person should be involved as well. And then it's really easy for me to jump in and answer more technical questions, or to ask, like the actual words come out. The right time. Very rarely can you ask someone to invest in your cause the first time you meet them. So, it's going to take a level of back and forth, getting to know them, really understanding who they are and what motivates them. I ask myself if it's the right time. When I try to determine if it's the right time, I ask myself, why would they give and why now? And why would they meet with me, and why would I want to meet with them? And do I know enough to feel comfortable in having a conversation that is centered on what their motivations are and how those intersect with my cause? And then in the right amount, I determine that based on prior giving history, what I've been able to glean from research, and then just how I feel. But I always ask for a specific amount, and it's an amount that honestly moves us as an organization forward. I've never met anyone who is mad at me because I've asked them for too much. Donors are going to want to know that their investment is going to help us move the dial. And while they may say, when that amount comes out, they may say, I can't do that, I have a plan B. But I always start with what I believe the ideal to be. And sometimes I will change that ideal in the course of the conversation, just because of the feeling that I'm getting in how the conversation's unfolding. So then what does it really look like? So there are 6 steps, and the first of all one is to build rapport, right? You're not going to just like come in and say, we're great, give us money. Now, I have had donors, as soon as I sat down and said hello, they'll say, what do you want and how much? Be prepared for that. So I think that's because some people they like to try and throw you off. And I'm always ready to go. But usually there's a rapport building, or you're catching up. How are things going? Then you move into why you're asking that case. You're talking about how their motivations and what they're passionate about intersect with that. Why this is so beneficial to the community. It's not beneficial to your organization. It's beneficial to the community, what you're trying to accomplish. And then you're going to close. And the way you close is you ask. The way I typically do it is I will say, Paul, we know how passionate you are about youth development. We'd like you to consider an investment of, and then some amount. And then be quiet. I mean, really, stop talking. Because the supporter that you've just asked for an investment from needs to take a moment to process the fact that you've asked them for a financial investment and how that fits into their view of themselves as a philanthropist. And then let them speak first. As soon as you've asked, let them talk. And then respond. They may have questions. If it's a big ask, let's say it's a several $100,000 ask or $1 million ask, they're going to have questions. Be ready to respond. And even if the response is, that is a great question that I don't know the answer to, let me get back to you, that's okay. Be honest. Be honest. Don't try and make something up on the fly. And then, but stay in control. And what is the next easy step? If they say yes, the next easy step is awesome. How would you like this recognized? If they're not sure or they need to talk to other people, set a time that you're going to follow up. And then, and if they say no, talk with them about the future, what it holds, how important they are, and then figure out when you might talk again. The sixth step is be patient and be persistent. You have people, they may need some time. They need to feel comfortable and confident, not only in your organization, but in themselves as a donor, right? So, but you've got to be patient with them, and you sometimes need to be persistent, especially people at the top of your prospect grid. So then what's the future? I'd point to the last bullet point, which is in red, and it's don't disappear until the next ask. Keep them involved, keep them engaged, talk with them about how their investment has helped you move forward. Invite them out to experience your program to see firsthand what their investment has been able to accomplish. Talk with them about what you perceive as the future and how they feel about that. Just don't disappear. They can introduce you to other people who might be interested. So always keep an eye on the future and them as partners to get to where you want to go. And then I would think finally, I saw this quote from John D. Rockefeller Jr. a while back, and this is a little bit paraphrased, but I think that this really sums up why asking is so important, why you cannot be afraid to ask. Never think you need to apologize. It is your duty as much as his or hers to give. Your duty is to ask. Okay.
Whoa.
I think that that's going to do it. Hopefully it's going to come back.
I really love the duty to ask. As we care about our missions, as we believe in the work that our organization is doing, any uncomfortableness that we have with this act of asking is what we give.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't mention, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Anna. Thank you. Practice. I mean, I've been asking for money for 25 years. I still practice before an ask happens so that I can hear the words come out, so that I know that I've got the right flow. Never be afraid of practicing. And it helps me to remain authentic to who I am as an asker and my style, as well as to not overrun the person that I'm meeting with.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. One question that came up was how you mentioned that you're comfortable asking on your own, but you like to do this as a team activity. How do you decide who's the best person to make an ask?
Yeah, so I try and find someone who that particular prospect is comfortable and confident with. I do not ask someone to come along with me who that prospect does not like, because that's the fastest way to a no that I know of. And I know organizations that have done this, and they have talked their way out of asks because they don't listen to the donor who says very clearly and explicitly, do not send so-and-so, right? So you're looking for a person that prospect knows, or if they don't really know anyone in the organization, I like to take our members of our program team so that they can talk about how effective the program is, what they're doing, the future. You know, I am very fortunate that I've worked with executive directors who don't have the kind of ego that insists that they are there all the time, right? They are perfectly happy to put the program and what we're doing front and center. And if that means that they're not there, then that's fine with them. Likewise, if I'm not the right person, for whatever reason, I will prep whoever's asking and I will send them on their way. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for fit, right? I'm looking for someone who is going to be a good fit with that person.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
It was very concrete, but also very kind of inspirational and aspirational for a lot of us that are not at that point in our careers where you have that level of experience with the major gift ask. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Anytime.
With our team. Our next presenter is Kelly Wilson. Kelly is an experienced fundraiser herself, and she as well has worked in different parts of our sector, but now she's doing something that I think is so exciting and cool. She is supporting campaigns and training nonprofits through the Global Giving crowdfunding platform. So we brought her in to talk about an aspect of our industry that is like maybe second only to the you should ask Oprah for money, is the you should just do a crowdfunding campaign, right? So Kelly's going to tell us, with all of this experience that she has with thousands of nonprofits doing crowdfunding, what is really involved in doing a crowdfunding campaign.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. And thanks for having us. This conversation's really exciting, and I'm excited to layer onto it with the crowdfunding aspect. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me go ahead and share my slides here. Great. All right, so is crowdfunding right for you, and how to tap into the power of the crowd? As I've been listening to our first two presentations, I've been starting to think about how to compare and contrast crowdfunding with the kind of the more traditional fundraising models just discussed. And it's come to me that crowdfunding is a lot about democratizing that traditional fundraising role. It's about maximizing individuals' networks and moving from that one-to-one connection to the one-to-many connections. So we're going to dive in and think about, is this right for you? How do you think about that? And then how do you tap into the power of the crowd? How do you really achieve that for your organization, and how it fits into everything else you're doing? So for a step back, I just wanted to give a quick introduction of Global Giving if you're not familiar with it. So we're the first and largest global crowdfunding community, connecting nonprofits, donors, and companies. Over 15 years now, we've raised over 300 million for organizations based in over 170 countries. So we're extremely global, and a ton of activity is always happening on our site. So there's some of the high bar numbers there for you to look at. Our website, if you go to it, globalgiving.org, that's what it looks like. And if you break it down, this is what an individual project page looks like. So if you were to be fundraising, this would be your home base where you would send your donors. Great. And what we're going to spend most of the time today on is thinking about crowdfunding. Are you ready? And then I'll review 5 elements of success. It was very hard to narrow it down to just 5. Even in listening to the first 2 presentations, I thought, yes, I should include that too. So we'll go through this and highlight those similarities and then sometimes those differences. So for crowdfunding, the first thing you have to kind of do a gut check with is that you have a champion within your organization to own this project. It doesn't mean that it will be your priority for the entire year, but perhaps when you're doing your fundraising, your annual fundraising plan, like Jen was talking about, maybe for 1 or 2 months of that year, you dedicate your time and make it your #1 priority to run a crowdfunding campaign. So you don't have to be running it the entire time, but maybe there are a few highlights in the year where a crowdfunding campaign is the opportunity for you. Perhaps during year-end fundraising, perhaps if you work with saving endangered species or with microplastics in the ocean, maybe like World Ocean Day is a big moment for you, something like that, right? A highlight point. Another key to see that you're ready for crowdfunding is that you've set a goal. So a little bit tighter and stricter than having a plan is setting a goal. And what we like to say here at Global Giving, a lot of you have probably heard it, but that goal should be a SMART goal. It should be specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. So maybe you want to grow the bottom of your donor pyramid. You want to get a lot more of those grassroots $10, $20 donors into your pipeline. And you want to really grow your network there. Crowdfunding is a really great opportunity to really expand rapidly in that way and at that part of the pyramid. The third thing for crowdfunding is that you want to do a gut check is that you can think of perhaps 3 to 5 people to join your fundraising team. And I want to challenge you to think inside your organization, but also outside of your organization for who might be on that fundraising team. I think we've all probably opened up Facebook before and saw a friend from high school fundraising for a race that they're doing or something like that. So who would be willing to make that kind of public commitment to your cause? Going back to Paul's kind of prospect grid that he showed there, maybe even thinking about those folks who are on the high or low capacity, but high interest. So people who are really connected to your work. This is kind of a in between a non-fundraising ask and a fundraising ask, right? You're not asking them to fundraise, but perhaps you're asking them to go out on behalf of you and articulate in their own words, their own stories about why they're connected to your work, which is really engaging and cultivating for a donor to speak to your organization in that way and really helps them process their connection and why they are so connected. It might even strengthen that bond in the long run. But there are a lot of different opportunities there. Also, your board is a really great pool for online fundraising advocates. So you could take that in any number of directions, but the #1 thing here is that crowdfunding is not, unlike a major gift officer, crowdfunding is not a solo one-person activity. So you want to get a whole bunch of folks together because the idea is that you're taking advantage and leaping off of each one of those individuals' networks and maximizing that crowd effect. Also, so many folks across the world of organizations, small and large, are brand new to crowdfunding. And so you have to have a bit of a willingness within yourself and within your organization to try new things and perhaps not set yourself to such a hard financial goal as the outcome, but to figure out how this works for you and your organization and then what purpose it can serve in the long run. It's can add to one of the different streams of revenue that you have and increase your organization's sustainability, and figuring out how it fits into your kind of fundraising puzzle is going to be what you're going to figure out kind of the first and second time you launch a crowdfunding campaign. And you'll get better at it every time, which I can attest to with all the organizations we work with here. So here we'll dive into quickly just overall highlights, and you could go into any one of these topics in depth. The 5 elements of a successful crowdfunding campaign. This is probably the one that is different than very different than personal one-to-one sitting in the same room over coffee fundraising. You want to get your story straight and you want to be very, very quick. Online, people's attention span is super short. So on Global Giving, we've observed that the average donor sits on a project page, the one that I showed you earlier on Global Giving, for an average of 4.2 seconds before they decide to either leave or donate, which means they're probably not reading all the text. They're probably reading some combination of the project title, looking at the photo, thinking about the donation amounts, if they're moved, and that's it. And then they're moving on. So, and again, if you're, a fundraising advocate posting something on Facebook, you really want to get across your passion and your excitement quickly, just because people are scrolling. So you want to be quickly captivating with online fundraising and kind of steal the show and get them to click on your link. Great. And other things here is in order to capture that attention, we always say use photos, but like also use really great photos. You want to use photos we found close up of individuals, people. Even though it's online, our brain still triggers when you see another human, when you make eye contact. So close up photos of an individual, making eye contact, clear focal point, not a lot of background. Those we found to work best on Global Giving project pages. On Facebook and online on social media sites, obviously video is often prioritized, but you also want to make those very quick, again, because attention span. And to that point, you want to get straight to the point. So put the most important information in the first 3 sentences, and best to only have 3 sentences, honestly, in your online social media outreach to really get home the point fast, which is really a great exercise in figuring out exactly what it is you are to say, being economical with your words and figuring out what the gems are sounds easy, but is a difficult homework assignment, because as fundraisers, we all have a lot to say all the time. So that is a fun exercise in this. And again, make it clear, you always, and this is especially with how to donate, right? So we're all online. Maybe your donors are a little bit older, maybe they're not as savvy online, so you want to make it where to click, how to give, super simple. Don't distract them by sending them to your annual report and a most recent press release you put out. Include one link, include it to be the donate link, and I really appreciate Paul's suggestion of making an exact ask. Whether or not you're asking for a couple $100,000 or $10, it really helps to anchor someone into thinking about the amount that they're going to give. And yeah, don't forget the ask. So yeah, definitely make a clear call to action in all of those ways to keep it super clean, crisp, and effective. For crowdfunding, the second biggest tip is to lean into your network. So help your organizational advocates become storytellers, right? And to really expand the outreach for your network. So you are only connected to so many individuals, your organization is only connected to so many individuals, but that first circle of folks that you're connected to are connected to a whole world of other individuals. And so you want to get them wrapped up into this crowdfunding campaign. So definitely that is the best way to reach the crowd, is through the folks who are already connected to you. I think one of the biggest misconceptions with crowdfunding is that you just put up your crowdfunding projects and miracle donors will come through the door. And that's not how it works. There are definitely a few long-standing truths to fundraising, whether it is online or offline, that remain true. So that connection piece is still the first piece that is always so important, that will, I don't imagine will ever be gone from fundraising, no matter what kind of technology comes our way. So your fundraising advocates, they could be anyone. You're gonna have to sit down and take, have a brainstorm with yourself, with a team of coworkers to figure out who might be on that fundraising team with you. And your fundraising advocates, once you pick that team and you set your team goals, maybe overall you're going to raise $10,000 as a team over the course of a month crowdfunding, and then break it down into individual goals, and then break that down into a list of individuals they're going to ask. And then you'll want to give them tools. So maybe sample social media text they can give out, maybe a sample email they can send, and of course encouraging them to personalize it as much as possible, because that's where the power of the crowdfunding aspect really comes in. And then because you're asking people to come in and help with fundraising, perhaps they are a volunteer, perhaps they are a program member of your staff who doesn't typically do fundraising, thank them for their time. Always practice gratitude. It is appreciated always and everywhere. All right, I'm going to speed through these. Email like a pro. Email is definitely one of the most powerful online fundraising tools. I think a lot of folks gravitate towards social media. Social media, in my mind, is a really great place to rally your existing supporters, to give them that, to remind them what you're up to share the latest report your organization's come out with, and to let them know what you're doing with the funds that they have given. It has not yet proven to be a super effective fundraising, crowdfunding tool. Not to say that that can't change. There's a lot of things shifting underneath kind of the foundation of fundraising on sites like Facebook. But here at Global Giving, we found that emails typically generate 7 times more donations than social media posts. So that is true today. I'm not sure, it might be very different tomorrow, but that is what we've found here, and you'll have to observe what's true for your own organization. I'm going to skim through these really fast, but there's a lot to dig into about email strategy. But the number one that I have is to segment. If you're emailing a lot of people at once, the worst thing that you can do is send the same message to every single person and make them feel like they're getting a mass email. So figure out the quickest, easiest ways that you have to divide it, whether or not it's they've never given to you before, or they've given to you once, or they've given to you for 10 years, where they're based, what kind of programs they've donated to in the past. Figure out how to make it personalized to them, even though you're doing it in groups, and it doesn't have the benefit of that one-to-one connection. For emails, again, high-quality photos are always helpful. We found that limiting your emails to share one short story as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4 or a story, and limiting it to kind of getting across one point in one email is the best way to go. Having that clear call to action and obvious donation link are all keys to email, and there's a lot of more resources out there about emails, and I can include some later on after the presentation. Number 4, and I think this one really carries across the board here, is that a key to online fundraising is being passionate. So you're getting your crowdfunding team, your advocates, your champions to go out there and share why it is they personally care about the work that they do, and asking others to do the same. So why it is that this is the number one cause they support, or for employees of the organization, why it is that there's nothing more important in the world that you could be doing. People love that authenticity, that vulnerability, and when that comes across and when it is genuine and authentic, it's hard to resist. So definitely, share what brings you to work every day, what drives your connection to the cause, and have a sit down with your team and share your story about what brought you to the work that you are in. And go into that kind of deep space, and share that kind of emotional story that brings you to this cause, and practice it, refine it, right? Shorten it, because the first time you tell it will not be the best, and you'll get better at it, and then maybe you can see it from a lot of different angles. And I think it's just helpful to really be able to articulate that well and quickly, really both online and offline. This, in my time at Global Giving, has been it seems so simple, but it is probably the biggest thing that helps people prioritize crowdfunding and be successful at it. Set a deadline. This not only gives internal staff and the ability to prioritize what might often never reach the top 1 or 2 or 3 priorities of doing crowdfunding, but if you decide in the month of October, we're going to launch our first crowdfunding campaign, we're going to do it on this, on this platform, we're going to raise X amount of dollars from X many donors, and it's going to be by this deadline. Staying true to that both allows you to internally prioritize it, and externally it allows you to kind of create an artificial answer for the donor to answer why they should give now. So those are kind of the quick 5 tips I have for how to start a successful crowdfunding campaign. And I think I included this picture here because just to re-emphasize that it is a team effort. It is not done by one person behind a desk. It's done by many who are very passionate about the cause. So for everyone kind of listening in today and watching this, I encourage everyone to give this a try. I think every organization should try it out to figure out how it fits into your fundraising plan. I often hear that going through crowdfunding really helps shake up an organization and figuring out how do they talk about their organization in quick, short sound bites, and it's really helpful to go through these exercises. So what I run here at Global Giving is a program called the Accelerator. It is a training ground for crowdfunding, honestly. Most folks who are doing it, most organizations, it's their first time. And so it's a 2-week training program followed by a time-bound crowdfunding campaign of 3 weeks with a lot of support and rewards along the way. So if you're interested, there's one coming up in September is the next one. And there is the site to look at if you want to dig in a little bit more. But and we, of course, have a lot of resources for anyone who's curious to learn more, a lot of free resources here for you. And that's where I'll leave it, and happy to answer any questions here.
Yeah, and Kelly, thank you so much. I think my brain is still a little bit stuck back on that 4.2 seconds and just like processing the difference between how many of us sometimes think, here are all the things that are important about the work that we're doing and the people we serve and and then like you hear 4.2 seconds. How do you communicate to that to people in 4.2 seconds? So it's amazing that you guys are offering these resources to help people meet that need. So we do have a couple of kind of rapid fire questions. What are the social media platforms how do you meet people where they are on social media?
Yeah. For the nonprofits I work with, it really depends on who their audience is, right? So for some organizations, perhaps in India, WhatsApp is huge. So that might be where they share a lot of information with their crowd. Facebook, I think, is a long-standing kind of tried and true place to do fundraising. I think Twitter is a bit more new, and then some people like to post on LinkedIn, Instagram as well. I've seen, and again, I'll say email's the primary driver for donations still.
Okay. How does your number of supporters predict your outcomes in crowdfunding?
Yeah, I don't know. We challenge organizations to get a large base of supporters because it is the benefit of individual giving, and especially individual giving at the smaller levels as opposed to the major gifts, is that it really helps organizations find stability. It helps them with flexibility in their spending, and it provides like an ongoing base of supporters. So your goal is definitely to have as many donors as possible. I'm not sure if I'm quite getting to the crux of that question, but if there's a clarification there, happy to go for it.
Then what rewards motivate fundraisers and donors?
Great question. Yeah, folks can, so this is definitely a part of the training and talking about, are you able to have an in-person meeting before you launch the crowdfunding campaign? I definitely think doing that in-person bit is really great. And again, sharing them, making them excited about it, being a motivator, and providing them with the language that they need so that they can feel confident about being a spokesperson for your organization, so that they don't feel they need to do a whole lot of homework and research the history of your organization, but that they feel confident that they have enough. And then throughout the crowdfunding campaign, maybe it's 4 weeks, checking in with them to ask kind of, fundraising is one great fear that we all have. And so checking in with them to see how it's going and kind of what exciting moments that they have and what pitfalls that they have. and sometimes doing group check-ins so that you get a little bit of that peer motivation to come back to share what you've done throughout the week.
Kelly, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for sharing your time this afternoon with our network and for sparking a lot of thought and interest in the different ways that you guys are fundraising with your different organizations. It's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Bye.
Yeah, thanks a bunch.